Hello, what's up guys? This is Celt D&B and this is my first YouTube video. I'm going to be breaking down a track of mine called Again that I have put out on my record label Boa Records. So this is a little preview just of the drop. Okay, so we're going to be breaking down each of the segments. So drums, bass, introduction, and the effects that I've used. So let's dive in. Okay, so I'm going to be looking at the drums first because in any tune, that is the most essential part. It's the most key thing that keeps going through the whole song. So let's have a look. So for all my drum samples, I've used Splice and Loop Cloud, and I've got a kick here, which has not much processing on it. It's got a plugin called God Mode, which I use, and it's got a couple presets like general drum boost, stuff like that. And I've just taken the tape and the buzz down and set the makeup a little bit down because it kind of just boots it a little bit too much. So I've just got that on here. So that's the kick. And then what else have we got here? So this is the other drum. So this is the snare and the hat, I think. Yeah. So there's just there's a nice constant, there's a constant hi-hat that just sits every fourth. Just boom, 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 boom. So that keeps the rhythm going. And then the snare, there's no processing on that hat, by the way, but on the snare there's also no processing on that, which is strange because I thought it would. Anyway, I made this a while ago, so don't take any notice. And then I've got this kind of open hat, which I've placed slightly off beat here just to give it a little bit of rhythm. So it just hits there. Right, so for the drums, in the intro, there's nothing for the first 18 bars because I've got my pads and stuff going there. And then it's got the normal drum pattern of a drum and bass tune, which is going to be kick on the first and then kick just before the snare here, if you guys want to just have a look at that. And then towards here, this is where it starts building up. So I've got just a kick roll going, and let's have a listen. So this goes. So it's pretty easy. I mean, if you know how to copy and paste, you know how to do that. So yeah. And then let's move on to the intro bits, and we'll get to the basses later. So at the beginning, we've got some pads. So this is kind of like a vocal and a synth that have been chopped up a bit. When I chop stuff up, I go over here, I right click and I press consolidate just to make it all one audio. So that's that. It's a nice melody that just keeps going through. That's how the song starts, but I've also got some booms, just some impacts that hit through. And they're in key, by the way. You don't want your impacts to be out of key, so check that. So there's boom by itself. And then what I've done further down is I've pitched these up, just so it gives it a little bit of variation. So I've got the pitch knob just dialed up 2, and then 3 here. You know, whatever sounds okay if you've kind of got the ear for it. So yeah, and then I've just got some splice vocals, to be completely honest. I love splice for vocals, but they've been chopped up a bit. So what you have to do is you have to go into these, and you've got to use these little things here. They're called warp markers. And what they do is, Ableton automatically sets some for you, but you've got to drag and drop them and basically make sure they're hitting on the beat in time. So, I start again for you. And the processing I've got on the vocals is quite heavy. There's a lot of stuff going on here because the raw vocals just don't sound that good, to be honest. So I've got a reverb, you know, set to 50% wet. It's high cut, and I put the diffuse up a lot. So when I have these gaps here, it fills the audio without it just chopping straight off there. I've got a God mode, again, the one I told you. This one's got vocals given some body, but I've taken the warp buzz down so it doesn't kind of really hit those high ends. We've got some Ableton stock EQ8s. This one's called Remove Mud. I think I've changed it slightly. That just removes all the kind of the low frequencies. Airy vocal, I was messing around with that to see what it sounded like. If you just drag and drop it on, it sounds pretty good. Delay, but it's set to only about 2%. So again, that's just helping fill these gaps where it would cut off without it. And then another God mode, which is brighten up the highs. So those are the vocals. Let's see. Right, let's move on to the bass. So the main basses I've got here, I've got a big Reese bass that starts, so the tune drops and all the drums cut out, and you've just got this Reese bass that kind of really hits you. So it's I've just taken that one from Loop Cloud, I believe, and there's no processing on it because it sounded completely fine. But what I did do is, again, I've done these warp markers here, and I put it in Complex Pro and Formant, so when I change the BPM, it doesn't distort any of the quality or anything like that. And then the main bass, the really nice bass that comes after that, this one, it's a really good Formant bass, and I will show you the serum patch that I have made for this bass. So let's see. In serum, we've got oscillator A and B going, but let's see what else. Yeah, we've got oscillator A and B. A is set to analog BD sign, which is just in the analog section. We've got this one which is called E yeah, which is in the vowel section. The unison of these is both turned up to 5 and they're pitched down -1. Notice how the sub is off here. That's because later on we're going to be distorting it a lot. We've got a filter here which has no LFOs going to it. It's just cutting out those really nasty high ends. So then the LFO, I've set it to this kind of shape, 2 bars, and it's on an envelope, not trigger. And what this does is it modulates the wavetable position and the level of this E yeah, and yeah, that's what that does. I'm not sure why it's on the noise. The noise isn't on, so take no notice of that. In the effects, this is where you really get that kind of the Formant filter yeah sound. So you've got tube distortion, that's being modulated by LFO 1. We've got an EQ, and it's just boosting some of those mids to kind of really bring out the strange sound that the Formant filter gives. And then we've got the Formant 2 filter, and this is where LFO 4 comes into play. So I've got it in this shape, 2 bar, and it's modulating the cutoff. So this is what it sounds like without the Formant filter, and this is what it sounds like with the Formant filter. So you can see this shape is kind of what gives it that vowel sound. And then again, compressor, I've got multi-band on the compressor, and the threshold is, I mean, it's a bit low, but it works. Reverb, bit of reverb just to get this tailing off effect at the end. And yeah, that's the main Formant filter for the tune. And after that, so it goes Reese Formant filter, so it's kind of like a call and response, and then there's these kind of, I don't know what you'd call them, like wubs. So it goes, so that was just one sound, and I've just popped 4 of them there, triplet timing just to give it a bit of rhythm. And then we've got, so that's the main call and response for the basses here. And then Over here we've got the respace again, but I've separated it into another channel, and what I've done is I've automated this frequency of the EQ8, so you can see here it goes, watch the EQ8 here, it goes down, so it sweeps it down, and there's a saturator on that one as well. Yeah, I forgot to tell you about the processing here on the formant filter. So we've got a saturator set to sinal fold. I find you get some really nice noises out of that, so I've just boosted the drive up. EQ8, this one is, it's taking down, honestly, a little bit of advice, if you've got a bass and you want it to sound a little bit weird or a little bit different, pop a saturator on it, sinal fold, pop an EQ8 on it, start messing with the shape, start dipping some of these bits in between 100 and 1K, and you sometimes get these really nice noises, and that's what I've done with this one. So I've done that twice. So you know how Ableton, the audio effects rack, it goes from left to right. So it'll go through this saturator, then the EQ8, then another saturator, then this EQ8. So that's what I've done there. And then I've got another formant filter here, which is similar to this one, but it sounds slightly different. Let's hear it. Yeah. So this one doesn't really have a vowel sound. This is more of a kind of, it's more of like a minimal kind of buzzy bass. And yeah, this is the patch. So we've got an analog BD sine, and we've got ML Adifunk, which is in the spectral section, I think. And then we've got unison up, which is giving that buzz, pitch down, and a sub, which is down 1. LFO4 is set to the level, the wavetable position, and the level of the noise, which also gives that kind of humming noise. And then we've got an MG low 12, which just cuts down those nasty highs. And in the effects rack, we've got a stomp box distortion, which is giving it that kind of buzzy noise as well. If you listen to it without, I mean, it sounds cool, but it doesn't sound like this. So yeah, that's got the drive modulated by LFO4. You can see the shape here as well. We've got an EQ. We've got the formant filter on it. Again, this is really important. This is without. It kind of gives it a little bit of shape, a bit of modulation. We've got distortion, compressor, multiband again, just to really give it that drive. Hyperdimension, but not too much. I think there's no dimension, but there's 28% on the hyper. And then we've got a phaser as well. I'm not sure why I've put a phaser on it, but it sounds cool. So yeah, and then post-processing, we've got a saturator EQ8, exactly like I said before, just mess around with it, and a reverb just so it tails off at the end. And then this section here, these 8 bars, they are just copy and pasted over twice, but there's a slight variation in the these wubs down here, just to spice it up a bit. So yeah, and then in terms of effects, every drum and bass tune needs a riser, builds up to the drop, gives it that tension. And on this, I always put a delay just so it kind of tails off at the end, and it doesn't stop abruptly. You see it kind of tails off like that. And then there's just more impacts. But those are kind of just, yeah. And then we've got, this is another atmosphere loop. So yeah, layering atmospheres is your friend. Layering impacts, pitching impacts. And down here we've got another riser, just that's kind of shorter for these smaller 8-bar bits here. And yeah, that is the breakdown of the track, and it sounds like this. I So yeah, if you enjoyed that, if you thought it was helpful, drop a like, drop a follow, and subscribe to stay tuned for maybe some more videos if this one does well enough.